Hi, I am Patricia Hruby Powell, and welcome to my book launch party for Lift as You Climb, the story of Ella Baker, illustrated by Gregory Christie and published by McElderry, Simon & Schuster. I am also the author of various books: Blossom Tales, Flower Stories of Many Folk, Zinnia, How the Corn Was Saved, Frog Brings Rain. These last two are bilingual in English and Navajo. Josephine, The Dazzling Life of Josephine Baker. Check out that fine bling from the ALA. Loving versus Virginia, a documentary novel of the landmark civil rights case. This is a young adult novel, documentary novel. And Struttin' with Some Barbecue, Lil Hardin Armstrong becomes the first lady of jazz, a middle grade book. So, who was Ella Baker? Ella Baker was a civil rights worker, a contemporary of Martin Luther King, but older. She was 29 years old when Martin Luther King was born. And they had huge respect for each other, but they didn't always see eye to eye. Ella is supposed to have said something along the lines of, how can you run a movement on the power of one charismatic personality? What happens when you're gone? Well, she was right. But Martin Luther King is supposed to have said something along the lines of, this is what I can do. So right smack dab in the very middle of my book, let me read a passage of an example of how they didn't see eye to eye, always. Now notice that Dr. King looks just like Dr. King. And once you see photographs of Ella Baker, you will see that Ella Baker looks exactly like Ella Baker from the time she's very young to the time she's an elder. So, this will help. Martin Luther King Jr. and 100 men, mostly preachers, and Ella worked together for Black freedom. They formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Churches worked with preachers at the top, handing down knowledge from the pulpit to the flock. That's how these preachers wanted to work now, like their churches did, from the top down. Ella worked from the bottom up, from the grassroots. She wanted people to solve their own problems, like her mother taught her, lifting as she climbed. But the powerful men weren't used to women working in their inner circle. Ella listened to the people, then raised their questions with the preachers. Shouldn't we harness the power of Black women as leaders? Shouldn't we train local leaders? Shouldn't we create education programs? Good idea, don't you think? She challenged Reverend King with her ideas. Rather than just the elite and the middle class, what about the poorest? What about the people at the bottom? Dr. King didn't always agree with Ella, but he respected her. He said, Ella must head up our new organization, the SCLC, to register voters, stand up to the whites. His order came from the top down. Ella thought he should ask, not command. Still, she agreed for the cause, for the freedom movement. She'd empower people to take action. She'd register voters, which is what she spent her entire life doing. Now, Ella had a very interesting upbringing. Her grandparents were slaves, and when the Emancipation Proclamation was delivered, and then after the Civil War, they worked the same acres that they had been slaves working. And they worked so that they earned enough money that they bought that land. And so not only did they help the community by getting them, others, to buy land, they helped them to vote. Granddaddy was a voter, and he helped other men to vote. So it was part of Ella's life early on. Here's the very beginning of the book. Under a bright North Carolina sun, Ella rode to church with Granddaddy and Mama. When Granddaddy Mitchell stood to preach, Ella sat in the deacon's chair, legs ruler straight, ears soaking up his strong voice. He preached, give to others. He preached, join together. He spoke freedom. He asked, what do you hope to accomplish? Now, notice how the palette changes with different pages. I love the way Gregory does this. This is the next page, and this is actually a story within a story. And Ella has her grandmother tell the story of how she and Granddaddy got together. Their master didn't want them to marry, but they did it because they were strong-willed, which they had to have been so strong-willed to survive, and then bought their old land, their own land. And then the palette changes again. Here is Ella growing up and working, and she's already working for civil rights. And then it changes to pink, and then a turquoise background, and Ella looks just like Ella. She's a beautiful woman. And time goes on, and we get to the part that I read you first. And here's another one of the two of them together. They look just like themselves with a chartreuse background. Or you might want to name these colors yourself. I love this spread. Look how Gregory made this prison with pink and blue. Now, this was the Snick years. Ella was an elder at this time, and Snick began to form. Snick is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and it started with young people sitting at lunch counters and demanding to be served. And they were the Freedom Riders. Remember, you might be familiar with the buses that burned in the 60s when they tried to break the old Jim Crow laws. They sat in whites-only seats. Now, the students asked Ella, what should they do? But Ella, always the teacher, said, what do you hope to accomplish? She wanted to know what they wanted to do. And they wanted to get the vote, they wanted to justice, and they wanted to be treated like citizens. So Ella guided them, but never told them what to do. She ruled, or guided, never ruled from the bottom up, the grassroots, and always asked, what do you hope to accomplish? And then Ella, the quote at the end, the fabulous quote, the struggle for rights didn't start yesterday and has to continue until it is won. And then there are author notes and bibliographies and notes on interviews that I listened to that other people did. And Lift as You Climb, the story of Ella Baker. Now, Gregory Christie was kind enough to send me some of his early illustrations. So here is a sketch of the cover, still in black and white, with a slightly different idea, with people applauding or being excited about Ella. Quite different, but same. And here's another sketch, which is more like the final cover, with the people, the voters and the picketers below. But look how Ella's face has filled out for the final. And obviously it's in color. I just love Gregory Christie's palette. Now, I never would have known anything about, well, I didn't know much about Ella Baker till Shelley Washburn Masser turned me on to Ella Baker. She even named one of her kids after Ella. So thank you to Shelley Washburn Masser. Now, I hope you will buy my book, and I hope you will buy it at an independent bookstore to keep the local businesses in business. Now, my local bookstore is Jane Addams Bookstore in Champaign. Now, there is a link on my website, talesforallages.com, that takes you directly to ordering my book. And you can write on that link exactly how you want the book personalized. You can pick it up curbside, Or you can ask Jane Addams to send it to you. I mean, particularly if you're outside of the Champaign-Urbana area. But if you're in Champaign or Urbana and you have a hard time getting curbside, you can also add your name and your, well, obviously your name, and your address and your phone number so that I can text you and I will deliver it to your door. You can also buy it any other place. But we authors don't make an awful lot of money on royalties. You'd be surprised how little we make, and we'll make full royalty if you buy at an independent bookstore. You'll pay a little bit more, but we'll be very happy. It makes me feel a little shy saying that, but that will make authors very happy, and it gives you a little information about how authors live. I mean, mostly I make more money doing author visits than I do selling books and getting royalties. And we can't do author visits any longer. So anyhow, Lift as You Climb, the story of Ella Baker. I hope you like the book. I hope you like it a portion as much as I do. And keep your mask on, keep safe, go outside, enjoy the lovely weather. And thanks so much for being here. Bye-bye. And thank you so much to SCBWI Illinois for sponsoring this and thinking up this virtual book launch party idea. Thanks.